Hi, this is Nilgün Zahour from SM JUROR, and today we're going to be looking at the juror misconduct issues in the case of State versus Jenkins, which is out of Kansas. We're going to discuss four separate topics here. First, a juror's gifts to the prosecutor. Second, a juror's romantic feelings towards an attorney. Third, the use of an evidentiary hearing to determine whether or not there was juror misconduct. And fourth, the timing of the alleged juror misconduct. Now, in this case, in March of 2011, a jury found the defendant guilty of first-degree murder. In December of that year, 9 months after the verdict, and while the case was still up on appeal, a juror, GM, sent the prosecutor a poinsettia, chocolates, and cards. The prosecutor had her investigator return the gifts to the juror with a note from the prosecutor indicating that she had received the gifts, but that she could not accept them because GM was a juror in the Jenkins case. The prosecutor then informed defense counsel and the court about the gifts, and the defendant moved for a hearing based on juror misconduct. A couple months later, in February of 2012, GM left voicemail for the prosecutor wishing her a happy Valentine's Day. Now, the evidentiary hearing was in May of 2012, and both GM and the prosecutor both testified. The prosecutor testified that she had no contact with the juror during the trial, and she also testified about the gifts and messages that she had received from GM. She also indicated that she saw GM in the courthouse one time several months after the verdict in September of 2011 when she was there in court on another case. GM also testified. He testified that he did not have any feelings of favoritism towards the prosecutor and that he based his verdict on the evidence that was presented at trial. He also indicated that he and his wife were going through a divorce, and in September of 2011, he was at the courthouse waiting for his divorce attorney when he saw the prosecutor. And it was several months after that that he began sending her gifts and cards. So, based on the evidence, the district court found that there was no juror misconduct in the case. Now, fast forward a year later. It's February of 2013, and GM again decides to send the prosecutor flowers and chocolates. So again, the prosecutor has to inform the court as well as defense appellate counsel about what had occurred, and then there was a second evidentiary hearing. At that hearing, both GM and the prosecutor testified. The prosecutor testified consistent with what she had testified to in the earlier evidentiary hearing, and then added additional testimony about the recent gifts that she had received from GM. GM testified that he did not have any feelings about being friends with the prosecutor when the trial was going on, and any feelings that he might have had did not influence the rendering of his verdict. The defense counsel also indicated that its investigator had contacted 7 jurors in the case to determine whether there was any sort of potential juror misconduct, and all the jurors had told the investigator that they did not think that there was anything that could compromise the integrity of the verdict. So, based on the evidence, the district court found that, again, there was no juror misconduct. The defendant appealed on that issue as well as many others, and the Kansas Supreme Court affirmed the court's ruling. Now, essentially, the Supreme Court said that the district court twice considered whether there was juror misconduct in this case, and twice concluded that there was not. Here, GM began sending the prosecutor cards and chocolates and flowers approximately 9 months after the jury returned a verdict. Additionally, there was evidence that GM had no personal relationships with any of the other jurors, the attorneys, or the defendant, and there was ample testimony that GM based his verdict on the evidence. So the Kansas Supreme Court held that there was no abuse of discretion by the district court in finding that there was no juror misconduct. So there are a couple of things that I want to highlight in this case. First, I want to talk about the timing of the alleged juror misconduct. Here, the juror contacted the prosecutor approximately 9 months after the verdict was returned. Now, in order for the defendant to establish relevancy of that contact, he has the burden to show that there was some sort of favoritism or some sort of bias by GM that was going on during the trial, which prejudiced the defendant. Here, there were 2 evidentiary hearings, and in essence, the defendant had 2 bites at the apple, but he could not establish that any juror misconduct occurred. And finally, the defendant's own investigator sealed the deal when it was determined that he contacted several jurors and there was no evidence of any inappropriate conduct which could compromise the verdict. So, did the juror have romantic feelings towards the prosecutor? Maybe, but his actions in this case did not constitute juror misconduct. That concludes our analysis of the juror misconduct issues in this case. For more information about other juror misconduct cases or our CLE courses, please click on our website. And remember, don't let juror misconduct taint your next verdict. I'm Nilgün Zahour from SM Juror. Thanks for watching and see you next time.